This is exactly where almost everyone quits, because save 50% of your income doesn't sound like a plan. Ramen for 20 years, cold apartment, a cave. So here's the first thing you need to see. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the average American household burns roughly 2/3 of its spending in just 3 categories: housing, transportation, and food. Which means when someone tells you to cut out your daily latte, they're going after the crumbs while the whole loaf walks out the door. The people who actually hit 50% aren't more disciplined than you are. They made a small number of big decisions one time and then basically stopped thinking about money. Let me show you the way that actually works and why it doesn't feel like a cave at all. Almost every how to save money video hands you the same tired list. So you white knuckle it for 3 weeks, feel deprived the whole time, cave on a Friday, and quietly decide you're just bad with money. You're not bad with money. You were handed a strategy that's mathematically broken. Those tips target $5 here, $12 there, while the money that actually decides your savings rate is sitting in 3 enormous categories you barely look at because they feel permanent. They're not permanent. They're just big. Let me give you the numbers, because this is the whole ball game. The BLS breakdown is blunt. Housing eats about 33% of the average household spending. Transportation, about 17%. Food, around 13%. Add them up, and roughly 2/3 of everything you spend lives in 3 buckets. In real dollars, the average household runs about $26,000 a year on housing alone, $13,000 on getting around, $10,000 on food. And here's the part that makes these categories so heavy. They don't happen once. A rent decision isn't a single purchase. It's 12 payments a year, every year, for as long as you stay. You didn't decide one time, you decided for the whole year, and then you forgot you decided at all. That's why the big 3 quietly run your financial life while you're busy feeling guilty about coffee. Now hold that up against the latte. A $5 coffee every workday for a year is about $1,200. Real money, but it's a rounding error next to a $26,000 housing bill. Cut your coffee to 0 and change nothing else, and you'd move your savings rate by maybe a point or 2. Cut your housing cost by 1/3, and you move it by 10 or more. That's why the latte advice makes people quit. It demands maximum willpower every single day in exchange for a result you can barely see. You feel the pain each morning, and the needle doesn't move. The big 3 are the mirror image. You make the decision once, you feel it once, and then it works quietly in the background for years. And remember, finish line compression from last time? This is where it earns its keep. Every big $3 you cut doesn't just get invested, it also shrinks the nest egg you need in the first place. One decision, hitting twice on the 3 biggest numbers in your whole budget. Here's the part that should completely reframe how you think about this. The reason save 50% feels like a cave isn't the 50%. It's that you're picturing getting there by subtraction, taking a normal, expensive life and painfully shaving little pieces off of it. That version genuinely is miserable, and it fails every time. But the people who live on half their income didn't shave, they rebuilt. They picked a smaller default on the 3 big things and then lived a completely normal, often genuinely happy life inside that default. They're not fighting temptation all day because the expensive option was never on the table to begin with. You can't miss the fancy apartment you never rented. That's the whole flip. Willpower is a tax you pay every single day, and eventually you can't afford it. A structural decision is a one-time cost that pays you back every day after. So the entire trick to saving 50% without misery is this: turn daily willpower problems into one-time structure problems. That's it. That's the thing the frugality gurus bury under a pile of coupon tips. So let's get specific. 3 categories, 3 structural moves. Housing first, because it's the giant and it's usually the hardest one emotionally. Get a roommate for a few years. Rent below what you can afford instead of stretching to the top of your budget. Rent out a room and let someone else cover most of your mortgage. Or the nuclear option that quietly makes everything else easy. Live somewhere cheaper. If your work is remote, your zip code might be the single most valuable financial decision you have access to. Dropping a $2,000 rent to $1,200 is a $10,000 a year swing. That single move can be a quarter of your entire savings rate. Transportation second. The average new car payment now runs well over $700 a month, poured into a thing that loses value the instant you drive it off the lot. Buy a used car, a few years old, in cash if you possibly can, and drive it into the ground. A reliable used car and a shiny financed one get you to work at exactly the same speed. One of them just quietly costs you a chunk of your 40s. Food third. And no, not stop eating. The leak here isn't groceries. It's the slow drift where cooking becomes the exception. and delivery becomes the default. Ordering to your door has exploded over the last decade, and it's brutal on a budget. The meal, the fees, the service charge, the tip, the markup 4 or 5 times a week. Cook most nights. Keep restaurants as an actual event you look forward to. Delivery on Fridays, not delivery when I'm tired. Mood rules collapse on the exact nights you're most likely to order. Calendar rules survive them. Now let me put real numbers on all 3 at once. Call her Maya, 29, making $70,000 in Phoenix, taking home about 55. She thinks she's fine because she doesn't buy luxury anything, but her defaults are doing the damage. She's at $1,500 a month in rent, a $400 car payment, delivery most nights, saving maybe 10%. She takes a roommate and her share of rent drops to $800. About $8,000 a year back. She sells the financed car and buys a used one in cash. She makes cooking the default, call it $2,500 more. That's roughly $15,000 a year redirected. On $55,000 take home, Maya just went from saving 10% to nearly 40% on 3 decisions. Push a little harder on housing or add a little income, and 50 is right there. Notice what none of these moves is. None of them is feel bad about coffee. There are 3 choices: where you live, what you drive, and where your food comes from by default. Get those right, and you're most of the way to 50% before you've denied yourself a single small thing you love. So here's the actual plan. First, ignore the small stuff on purpose. Stop budgeting your coffee. It's a distraction that makes you feel like you're working on the problem while the real numbers sit there untouched. Give yourself permission to spend freely on the small things you love. It costs almost nothing. And it's the thing that keeps this sustainable for years instead of weeks. Second, attack the big 3 in order of size: housing, then transportation, then food. Don't try to fix all 3 in 1 week. Pick the biggest one you can realistically change in the next 6 months and change it. Third, spend hard on what you actually value and gut everything else. Find the 2 or 3 things that genuinely make your life better, protect them completely, and be ruthless with everything you are buying out of habit or to impress people you don't even like. Fourth, recalculate your number every time. Every big 3 cut lowers the finish line you built last episode. Restructure your housing and your target nest egg drops and your timeline shortens automatically. Watch that number walk toward you. That's your motivation. And 50% stops being a cave. It becomes an ordinary good life that just happens to be built on cheaper foundations than your neighbors. So that's the honest version of a 50% savings rate. You don't get there by suffering through 1,000 tiny sacrifices. You get there by making 3 big decisions, one time. The cave is doing it by willpower instead of by design. But notice something, we've only pulled one of the 2 levers. This entire video was about making your spending smaller, and there's a floor on that. You can only cut a life so far before it actually does start to hurt. Your income, though, that has no ceiling, and it's the faster lever by a wide margin. So next time, I'm taking on the other half, how to actually raise your income. Subscribe, and I'll see you in that one.